Broadcasting, the Gab Radio Network.
Thank you for tuning in for this edition of Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali. I am attorney Zulu Ali with the Justice Watch crew, Rosa Nunez, Michael Bilal Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Andrea Rodeman. This week, like every week, I'll be discussing critical legal and social justice issues that are impacting our community. This week, we'll be discussing the issue of the Roe versus Wade debate over abortion, and we'll also be discussing the recent mass shooting in Buffalo, New York. So I'm going to begin by talking about the issue of Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade actually is a case that began in 1970 when a woman by she used a fictional name. She actually used the name Jane Roe in order to protect her identity. Her real name actually was Norma McCorvey, and she basically started a federal action against Henry Wade, who was the district attorney of Dallas, Texas. And the issue concerning the lawsuit was that she was suing over a Texas law that required or that prevented a woman from having an abortion, except in issues where it was life threatening, where the woman's life was at issue if she was in fact had the abortion. So at any rate, this case was heard ultimately by the U.S. Supreme Court. And when it was heard by the U.S. Supreme Court at that time, I think it was a split decision of 7-2. And in the decision, and the argument was over, and let's just understand the legal aspect of it. The legal aspect of it is about due process, about the 14th Amendment as it applied to states. They're saying that the state laws were vague and ambiguous, and that and that it was a fundamental right, the right to privacy, to not allow a woman to have an abortion. The U.S. Supreme Court, in a split decision of 7-2, agreed with Jane Roe, and there is born, the Roe v. Wade decision. There's actually been repeated challenges since that time to Roe v. Wade, which in many cases have to a certain degree narrowed the scope of it, but no, it was never overturned. I know in 1992 in the Planned Parenthood versus Casey, they established that restrictions on abortions were unconstitutional if they place an undue burden on a woman seeking an abortion before the fetus is viable. And it seems that, I guess for all practical purposes, this Roe v. Wade thing has just been, just a big issue. I mean, for decades, probably for the last 50 years since Roe v. Wade, I think that right now what's on the table is it's actually being challenged again. And what the Supreme Court, there was actually, I believe it was Justice Alito, had something that was leaked that showed that the court is basically poised to strike down abortion rights enshrined by Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. And he noted basically in his decision that, for the most part, he's just saying that basically it's about time that we strike down Roe v. Wade and I guess get out of the whole idea that a woman having an abortion is a constitutional right, which he clearly disagrees with. He don't think that that's a constitutional right for a woman to be able to choose to have an abortion, right? And the whole idea of right to privacy. And so, is it, and again, it goes back to, if they strike Roe v. Wade, it doesn't necessarily mean that abortions would no longer that women would no longer have abortions. It would be that each state would be able to implement their own law as it um, relates to the issue of abortion. What Right now it looks like there's at least more than 25 states that are poised to put in strict abortion laws. I mean, pretty much outlawing abortion. And there's actually probably about 13 or 14 states that have what is called trigger laws, meaning that basically as soon as a decision is made on Roe v. Wade that may um, restrict or prohibit any restrictions that states place on it, that they're poised to just get rid of abortion rights altogether. So I guess first of all, I guess the first argument is this really a legal argument or a legal analysis, or is this more politics? And I'm going to go to Rosa, and then I'm going to go to Andrea. So, how do you feel about that, Rosa?
I love that you brought this question up
Yeah,
because I definitely.
I'm getting a lot of feedback on you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. There was a lot of
Oh,
feedback that's coming through. I think
okay,
it's a
let me
little bit.
just put it closer. So I like that you asked this question because I definitely do believe that it's a matter of politics. I think that when you mention that he states that it's not a constitutional right, the reason why he mentions that it's not a constitutional right is because it's not explicitly stated in the Constitution.
Hmm.
I think that this whole issue of Roe v. Wade is more of a distraction issue,
Yes.
and it could provide groundwork to overturn other privacy laws.
Hmm.
We think about Justice Alito, right? He was appointed by Bush.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that by saying that abortion is not legal because it's not explicitly stated in the Constitution, would give states the power to decide, right, what is a right and what isn't a right to abortion. I think that when we think about the Trump presidency, Trump worked closely with Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and other Senate Republicans to reshape the federal judiciary. A vast number of federal peer court judges are appointed by Trump in his 4 years. He actually appointed 54 federal appellate judges in 4 years, one short of the 55 Obama appointed in twice as much time.
Hmm.
He appointed overall 226 federal appeals court judges. Trump flipped the balance of several appellate courts. Not only that, but he is a president that has appointed more Supreme Court justices than any other president since Ronald Reagan. So when we talk about Justice Alito coming out with this opinion and saying it's not explicitly stated in the Constitution, what would this allow other federal court judges to do? To interpret cases, perhaps, as determining what is and isn't a right? I think that this is definitely politics, and it's playing to the fact that Trump packed the court, and the more they're able to give states the leniency and the discretion of what is or isn't a right, would definitely allow them to move forward in the election and with all of the policies that they intend to pass
Mm-hmm.
at a court level.
Wow, interesting. That is interesting. I'm gonna let
Yeah.
you chime in on that, and then I can.
Well, shoot, I really don't have much more to add. I 100% agree with what Rosa said. 100%. It is all politics. When it comes to Roe versus Wade, I've always been. Oh, I'm sorry. I've always been. I don't understand how what I do with my personal body, my choices, how is that anyone else's business? How is that affecting anybody else?
Hmm.
And so, on that later level, trying to go, going away from the politics of it,
Hmm.
it's just another way of control. And I do believe too that a lot of the reason that this is going on now is
Hmm.
because of the population, the population that is actually doing the most of having the most abortions. And I believe that that is scaring some people. I know we're not going into that aspect of it, but you know what I'm saying. I think that that's making people nervous. So if I can control abortions and who's able to get the abortions, then I can get my race to still be here and be okay. Because we're not the ones doing it as much as other races.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, when we look at the issue of the interpretation of the Constitution, and when we start talking about the issue of fundamental rights, and the earlier courts who had made decision or had interpreted what fundamental rights are, like, for example, they're saying that it doesn't specifically say abortion,
Right.
but it's just like the right to bear arms. I mean, it doesn't specifically say guns either. So what if I was to say that it didn't mean a handgun, or it didn't mean a semi-automatic, when the right to bear arms meant something other than a firearm? I mean, could I make that argument? Since you know what I mean? I mean, if you're piercing words, and I think that in the idea of right to a right to privacy as it relates to the issue of an abortion and a woman's right to choose. I mean, they completely flipped it.
Yeah.
At least he did, as far as what he's being stated in his opinion. But anyway, but I'll weigh on that on the other side of the break. Please do not touch that dial. We'll be back with Justice Watch.
Do you have a great idea for a radio show but have no idea where to start? Or have you been hosting a podcast for a while and want to take it to the next level? If so, you need the Gab Radio Network. To host a show on the Gab Radio Network, all you need is your voice, and we'll handle the rest. From technical engineering to full-service audio production and much more. Every show on the Gab Radio Network can be heard on our station on the TuneIn Radio app. Plus, we put all of our shows on our satellite, which is accessed by over 5,500 stations. And here's the best part. You can host from anywhere you want. There are many means to connect to the Gab Radio Network remotely, and our staff of highly trained engineers and producers will make you sound like you're right here in studio. So, if you want to be on the Gab Radio Network, the same network that hosts the Small Business Advocate, Radio MD, and The Federalist, send an email right now to sales@gabradionetwork.com. That's sales@gabradionetwork.com.
Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer, while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands. Serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Wali and the Justice Watch crew. We're continuing with our discussion on the Roe v. Wade abortion debate, as well as the mass shootings. So before we went to the break, my discussion on the issue of Roe v. Wade and the debate on abortion, as we start talking about the issue of constitutional interpretation of what a fundamental right is as it relates to the right to privacy, and whether a right to privacy and a right to choice is relative to someone's right to have an abortion, right? And of course, we know that this has been at least 5 decades where the court has, for the most part, upheld Roe v. Wade, and now, of course, you have a different court that's coming to a different decision, and primarily the reason why is it is politics. I mean, I think that the issue with fundamental rights, I don't think that fundamental rights are things that necessarily change. I think the fact that you would have a court that at a later date would suggest that for the last 5 decades that the court got it wrong, and a woman's right to privacy includes a woman's right to choose as it relates to abortion, seems a little bit, disingenuous. Why now? And as we started, as we got into the issue of whether it was political, and Rosa and you guys talked about the issue of what's the implications of Roe v. Wade, and why does it, and we'll talk about this. Let's, we'll and I think that there's a relationship between the mass shootings that are going on and the issue of Roe v. Wade. I think from the perspective, because the whole idea is, the right to life, right? That is really the underlining argument of the Roe v. Wade, is the right to life. But as I've just recently heard, is that these so-called right to life people, they don't care nothing about life after you're born, right? After you're born, you don't really hear much about it. So, and now when you're thinking about issues relative, you don't really see much of a public outcry when it comes to the issues of these mass shootings, right? So now what's happening is you're having these mass shootings, like we just had, yesterday, for that happened in Buffalo. And for those who do not know what happened, a gunman heavily armed with tactical gear opened fire in a Buffalo, New York supermarket, leaving 10 people dead and 3 others injured yesterday, making it the deadliest mass shooting in the U.S. in 2022. Peyton Gendron, an 18-year-old white male, was arraigned on murder charges where he pleaded not guilty, and there was a 180-page document that was written by this person who described a planned mass shooting similar to what just occurred, including the writer's goal of killing as many black people as possible. 11 of the people shot were black and 2 were white. It also detailed a conspiracy theory known as the Great Replacement. You hear that?
Yep.
Let me say that one more time. The document also details a theory known as the Great Replacement. In the document, the writer describes himself as a fascist, white supremacist, and racist. They're looking at that, the issue. But anyway, let's talk about that. The Great Replacement. What is that? What do you think he means by using the whole idea of Great Replacement, and does that relate to the issue of abortion, and does it, and if so, how? Rosa?
From what I understood, the theory itself kind of points at the fact that people that are coming from other countries are taking over the opportunities that people that are white could very well be partaking in, and that they're being provided with resources that people that are already here have not been provided. That's what I understood from it.
Say that one more time. The resources are not being provided. What do you mean by that?
That per se, people that come here from other countries or that aren't born American citizens are provided with help that people that are already living here are not provided with.
Yeah. Is that what you think?
I think that may have a little bit to do, or may have something to do with it. I've heard that before. Actually had a debate with an instructor many years ago about something like that, saying that, we were talking about financial aid and different things that we experience and different, he called them privileges that we actually have. He said there's actually black privilege. There's no such thing as white privilege, but that was a whole nother story. But in regards to the great replacement, that was a terminology just now that I've never heard that before. But to me, if you're going through and you're feeling like I can go take these lives, I guess what he's making room for for some his own, for more white folks, or let's take black people out, and so that they can replace. So the white folks can replace them in jobs and positions and things of that nature. I'm not really sure the mind of a supremacist.
Yeah, I think that when you think about the whole, there's a couple things that I think how that the great replacement. I don't know as far as, statistically, as far as, the issue. I don't think we all really know what the statistics are with regards to abortion. The question would be, in light of the fact that we realize that there's so many issues that are addressing, there's so many problems that we have as it relates to race. The question would be, is there an argument or a concern about the demographics of this country as it relates to abortion? Is that a possible issue?
Yes.
What do you think, Rosa?
It does seem like abortion rates have dramatically increased as of 2017. According to the Guttmacher Institute, 13.5 per 1,000 women. So the argument of we're trying to overturn Roe v. Wade because there's more abortions, that's where it goes to. As far as it being a race issue, I know that it's definitely something that affects disproportionately women of color. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation when we talk about, how it's funny how they've clinged on to this whole issue of the right. So let's just go back, and I'm going to start playing devil's advocate. Let's just say that there are those who are extremely concerned about the issue of, the right to life. You balance the right to a life versus the life of a woman who happens to be pregnant. If you balance them, is there a viable argument that would suggest that when does a fetus become a person? Is that a legitimate argument?
You mean the debate as
Like,
what
so,
makes a fetus an actual living?
Well, they use the word viable. When does it
Okay.
become viable? In other words, when is it living? When is it an actual human? So the question is, are they killing? When does it become a human?
Well, I know that for Christians, life begins at conception, or attachment per se.
Right.
So it's a very slippery slope.
New nationally syndicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali to tackle the most pressing issues. Host Attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning trial lawyer who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com. Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep Your Hand on the Plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer, while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands, serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew, where we're continuing with our discussion on Roe v. Wade debate, abortion debate, as well as the mass shooting issue. So you brought up the issue about life being when does a life or fetus becomes viable, and you brought up the issue of contraception, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now,
yeah, to a lot of conservatives, life begins at conception.
So would you say what I'm saying is, did you say conception, or what about you? Are you talking about the use of contraception?
No, so to a lot of conservatives, life begins at conception or attachment. But my question is, if that's the argument, what do you do with contraception that prevents conception? Are you preventing a possible life? Is that kind of synonymous to killing, also known as possibly an abortion? What they consider killing is an abortion. Anytime you prevent conception, will you be liable for breaking this federal law?
What did you say, Joe? So Joe says they don't come together, so there's no life.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Conception, attachment, whatever you call it, to a lot of people, that's life. Yeah.
Huh? There's no attachment. Is that what you agree? Is that what you think?
So this that's always a little different for me. I grew up in a Christian home. My mother's a minister, and she said to a friend of mine who had talked to her about getting an abortion, my mother, her logic was, can you swim if you don't have life? And my friend was like, well, no, you got to have arms and this and that. She's like, no, not necessarily. She's like, sperm swims. She said, there's life in sperm. I'm kind of with Joe. It's got to be some kind of a attachment in order for it to be life. I don't think that it, it doesn't seem logical to me that without the sperm attaching to the egg, that's life, because the sperm can't survive without fertilizing, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think that what happens is that, and you know, then there becomes another art, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate
I
right
love it.
now.
I love it.
Okay. So I think that on one hand, when we talk about the issue of when does conception, well, when does a life become viable? It's, you know, you're talking about a life, and we're saying up on conception. Of course, you know, if it depends on what type of contraception you're using as to when, you know, there's, like, you have the morning after pill now, you have all kinds of different things that, you know, that may change that. Um, Joe says, one step further, should all women always be pregnant so that all possible lives can exist?
No.
No, no,
Yeah,
no.
Yeah, because
yeah.
it's a let me
But
stop.
but one of the things that I did want to talk about when it comes to that issue is when you're talking about the issue of contraception. So let's just say, on one hand, and I'm saying that if you want to argue for the um, those who are so-called pro-life, they can make. There is an argument about when there is a viable question about when does a life become a life, right?
Hmm.
But on the other hand, when we talk about the right to privacy as it relates to, you know, then could it be a slippery slope where when does the court stop making decisions about those types of issues? What is to say that if they overturn Roe v. Wade, that 10 years from now, they may rule out contraception?
Hmm.
What if 10 years after that, then they, you know, as it relates to any issue, or whether, no matter where you stand on the issue of same-sex marriage,
Hmm.
what about the
Exactly.
issue of marriage between people of different races?
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, so in other words, can we say? I mean, what is there a fundamental right, or should the states be able to do that?
And that's where the slippery slope falls,
Right.
because when you leave the individual states to decide, it's the disunity of the United States. You can see how divided we are.
Yeah.
But think about it. Like I said, Trump packed the courts. Who would this benefit if not the Republican Party? At whose
Absolutely.
discretion is this left to? The court.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely an issue. It's definitely an issue, and I think that's something that we have to discuss, because I think now, you know, we are, um, you know, are we really? Is it a slippery slope? Or does it really make any sense? Because, in other words, it doesn't make any sense unless you got a dog in the fight.
Mm. Right.
If you don't have a dog in the fight, then it becomes a little bit different. I mean, you have a different attitude, or you have a different outlook if it's something that doesn't have an impact on you. What if someone says, well, you know, men can no longer, um, you know, have operations that would prevent them from being able to
Vasectomy. Yeah.
vasectomy?
Mhm.
You know, and someone says that makes no sense because he should have a right to do that. And so is that a far-fetched comparison?
I don't. I don't think so. I think, like I
Mhm.
tell you, it's leaving it up to the discretion of the states, and not since the days of Jim Crow, when some states segregated African Americans in public places and others didn't. have the rights of Americans been so clearly differentiated by states as they will be if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade.
And so, is it really a issue of states' rights, or is it an issue of how we define your right to privacy?
It's an issue of how we define the fact that a justice can say, hey, abortion is not a right because it's not explicitly stated in the Constitution. States can very well use that same reasoning to abolish other privacy laws, which include what you were talking about, the right to same-sex marriage, the right to marry a partner who you choose to marry. I mean, think about white supremacists. They don't like the fact that there's interracial marriages.
Oh, really? So Joe's got jokes today. He says, should men be making laws for women?
No.
And the second one says, oh, and it says, I privately killed my neighbor the other day.
Oh, my God.
Okay. But, okay, so basically, and that is fine.
That's good.
So let's just talk about where we start about the constitutional analysis. It says, drawing on the 1st, 4th, 9th, and 14th Amendments, the court said the Constitution protects an individual's zones of privacy. And so the court determined that abortions was within a woman's zone of privacy. And so it is ruled that contraception, marriage, and child rearing were activities included in these zones. The court found that the zone was broad enough to encompass a woman's decision whether or not to terminate her pregnancy. So when we talk about zones of privacy, since the court has included contraception, marriage, and child rearing in those zones, could a state say, you know what, you cannot use, the different types of contraception, whether you're talking about, you cannot in the certain states use, birth control.
Yes, there's already trigger laws, like you mentioned in the beginning.
I mean, so they're saying that it's not included, but it does not necessarily mean that they've ruled on it, but it doesn't specifically state in the Constitution that contraception, marriage, and child rearing were zones of privacy. But that's how the court has interpreted it. Mm-hmm. So now that you've opened up the court's ability to make a determination now whether those things that are in the zones of privacy, whether they relate to zones of privacy, that means that each state can have the right to rule on contraception, marriage, and child rearing. Now, if we're talking about right to lifers, clearly contraception could be something that could be banned. Yeah. And clearly issues regarding child rearing could also be banned. And marriage. Mm-hmm. So if marriage can be included, if it doesn't have to be a situation where someone says, if someone said that let's just go with the issue. Well, there's, whether we're talking about people of different races marrying each other or whatever, if someone comes and they challenge that, I'm assuming there would be other issues that they could use to argue against the constitutionality of it. But it does open it up for debate, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of where, the issue is. And even those, when we talk about a woman's right to choose and limiting and restricting issues regarding abortion, is it really
nationally syndicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali to tackle the most pressing issues. Host attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning trial lawyer who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com. Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep Your Hand on the Plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer, while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands. Serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew. We're continuing on our discussion about the Roe v. Wade debate and mass shooting. So before we went to break, Rosa, you was going to address one of the issues. What were you going to tell me where you at with it?
Yeah, about the whole placing a limit on when women can get abortions, right? I think there's already certain limits that women can't surpass. I mean, according to the CDC, 79.3% of abortions in 2019 were performed at 9 weeks of gestation or earlier. It is recommended for women to not get an abortion later than 12 weeks. Not only that, but like I mentioned before, it's not that abortions are increasing because there's only 13.5 women per 1,000 women are getting abortions. In fact, abortion has decreased since Roe v. Wade and the access to sexual education and contraception. And also, there is also already limits on when you can get a medication abortion, which is when you're given a pill to abort, and that's only up to 10 weeks of pregnancy. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, there definitely should be a cap on when women should get an abortion, obviously no later than 20 weeks, which is something that's already recommended. But I feel that it's really this whole issue of abortion it's not about women. It's not about the fact that more women are going to get abortions and that's why we have to rule over it. It's about the fact that it's politics. That, you know, even when it comes to abortions that happen in office, 54% of U.S. abortions happen 10 weeks before, and they happen through that medication. A lot of the videos that you see out there placed by conservatives are in-office abortions, which are the least of the procedures that are done. But like I said, I think it's really not a matter of how many women are getting abortions, but rather of the fact that, you know, the Republicans have full control of 226 federal courts, you know, judges who can and will be able to say what is a right and what isn't according to the Constitution.
That's a tricky one. Because you said that most of the time. So what if a state? How far can a state go when as far as determining when a fetus becomes viable?
You
How
said
far can a state go?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, when is it? Who makes the decision when the fetus becomes viable? Whose decision is that?
A bunch of men.
Yeah.
Huh?
I mean, a bunch of men, really. I mean, because like I said, everyone. I'm pro-choice.
I
Do
mean,
what you want, but
there's women that are against abortion.
yeah,
There's a lot of them.
there's women that are against abortion. There's some that are for abortion. There's some that will say that life begins when you can detect a heartbeat, which is what
Yeah.
about five weeks or so, a little under 5 weeks, 5.5 weeks. And some will say, go up to 2 months.
Yeah. I mean, so
I,
ultimately that becomes the ultimate argument is when does that, because I think that if you say that the woman's right to choose stops when the fetus becomes viable, right? Would that be
well,
accurate? Should that be
that's
accurate?
what a lot of
Yes,
conservatives
yeah.
believe.
So, is that would that be accurate? I mean, it has to be, right?
Yes, I guess technically that would be subjective, technically, but
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I mean, I
Yeah.
think wouldn't that be
Look,
right?
I
I mean,
I
sometimes I think that do we believe on both sides that it's more it's very would we agree that Roe v. Wade is very symbolic? It's symbolic because and that doesn't minimize the importance of it, but it is symbolic.
true.
It's symbolic of the whole idea of a woman's right to choose,
Right.
and as well as other rights of privacies that would be akin to that, right?
exactly.
Exactly.
And then so do we? Okay, so let's just say that if I was I'm going to be completely objective, and I'm going to do an analysis that does not include my biases. Okay,
Okay.
and I want to know your thoughts about it. Now, those who are co-signing the whole idea of Roe v. Wade being about the whole idea that everybody in the world is getting, and I'm talking about where they overstep, is that it's not like, I mean, when it comes to the issue of people getting abortion, there is a timeline where I can see where there would be a concern where someone would say that I'm against, having abortion when a fetus becomes viable. In other words, I can be completely against abortion without necessarily saying that I want to outlaw abortion. Would you agree?
I agree.
Yes.
Because I think they're two different things.
Yes.
I think that sometimes those who are on the pro-life side tend to almost uh, argue in a manner in which it's almost personal,
I agree.
right? And so the reason why, and then when you begin to start imputing your beliefs to the extent that it's unreasonable on other people, then it becomes an unreasonable argument, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times people tend to make the argument, like many people do, based upon the fact that they truly don't understand the implications as it applies to everyone else, right? Because we tend to live in a society where fairness only matters when you're treated unfairly, right?
That's
And
true.
that is the society we live in,
Yeah.
right? I would go as far as saying, if I was a guessing man, that many people who are against abortion may have had abortions themselves, may have had relatives and children that have had abortions, because, we know that the only thing worse than not, at least for in my eyes, is being a hypocrite, right? And so that becomes the issue on that side of that argument, is that it seems that it becomes more than what it really is. There's something else that goes along with that, because it's a way in which politicians can use, and then you have people who are basically, and I hate to use this word because please, I don't want any of my listeners who are for abortions to take this the wrong way, but there's a lot of ignorance when it comes to this issue. And politicians use that ignorance there's actually statistics. They would make you think that everybody goes and gets abortion and uses abortion like birth control.
Birth control, yeah.
Like everybody's running to get abortions like every day. That's the way that they would make it seem. I don't know, because I haven't done any research on it, so I don't know if that's true. But I don't believe it's true. But what I can say, that if I'm using the balance.
A new nationally syndicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali, to tackle the most pressing issues. Host attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning trial lawyer who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com.
You're on board KCAA's Inland